So at that point, I really thought I was about to go into labor. And the first sentence she said is, "Let's go have this baby." Like, how could I have gone so long in labor and in that much pain and only be 2 centimeters dilated? Just give me half an hour, I'm gonna get this baby out. Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. It feels so crazy to be sitting here filming this video right now. I'm going to be talking all about my birth story, as you can probably tell from the title. The last video I uploaded was actually my birth vlog, but when I was watching it back, I realized how many details were missing from my labor and delivery story, especially when I got to the hospital, because I didn't actually get to film anything when I got there. It was just like crazy and everything happened so quickly. So I wanted to sit down and film like a proper detailed birth story, all the nitty-gritty details. I A, love watching these videos, but B, I thought it would just be really cool to watch back myself in a couple years time, because I just think it's so easy to probably forget all the little details. And yeah, I just love the idea of being able to look back on it. I will start off by saying that I feel like I had a very positive birth experience, which I am so grateful for. Giving birth has always been something that absolutely terrified me. Like, honestly, one of my biggest fears in life was having a baby. And yeah, just the fact that I can look back on it and think so highly of it and feel positive about it, I just really feel super lucky and thankful for. So yeah, we're gonna get into the details of how it all went down. If you are new to my channel, don't forget to hit subscribe down below, give the video a thumbs up, and let's get on to the juicy. Alright, so if I look down at my phone, it's because I've written everything on my notes, like literally every detail you could possibly think of. So as you probably saw in the vlog, my symptoms for labor actually started on, I think, the Tuesday, the 11th of October. So that day I lost my mucus plug and I also had my bloody show. So at that point I really thought I was about to go into labor. I started vlogging it and I really just thought that like that night or maybe the next day everything would start. Boy, was I wrong. And then it mellowed out for the next couple of days, and on Saturday the 15th of October, I think it was the 15th, is when everything actually started. So I woke up at 3 AM with mild like contractions. They were coming like every, I would say, 8 to 10 minutes for a good couple hours, and they were at the point where I couldn't sleep through them. So basically for that rest of that night and then the whole next day, it didn't really progress any further. Like, all the contractions were still coming 8 to 10 minutes apart and they weren't getting any stronger. We kind of just went about our day. So we got up, we went for a walk, we made pancakes, we dropped our dog off at our friends because they were going to watch her when we went into labor. So yeah, it was still like manageable. I could still like go about my day. I think we went grocery shopping that day. So yeah, nothing too crazy, but it did take a very long time to get things progressing. So as I said, that was at 3 AM Saturday morning. And then the next thing that happened was 5 PM that afternoon is when my waters broke. So that is when things started actually progressing from there. I was taking a nap and I woke up and I just felt a tiny bit of liquid and was like, what was that? I army rolled out of bed, and as soon as I stood up, the water just gushed out, literally like the movies. So I called the midwives because they like you to come in to make sure that your waters actually did break. So we went into the hospital, I would say maybe at like 8 PM that afternoon. And again, I really thought I was about to like have my baby. So we finished packing our hospital bags. We took the hospital bags with us. Like, I was dead set, I'm having this baby right now. We got there, they couldn't check how dilated I was just because of risk of infection. I think they wanted to wait until you were in like active labor to check how dilated you were. That was something I never knew, because all of the birth videos that I watch on YouTube, they always get checked right away. I mean, sometimes you even get checked in your midwife appointments. So yeah, by this point I hadn't been checked yet at how dilated I was. I can't remember what they did to check my waters. I think they made me put a fresh pad on, and I was already wearing them just because every time I had a contraction, more water would keep leaking out. So if your waters do break, I highly recommend getting big maternity pads or even wearing disposable undies, because there is a lot of liquid that just comes out. But anyway, I put on a fresh pad and then they made me take it off and have a look at the color of the waters, and I don't know what they do to test it, but that's what they did. And they did tell me that my waters had broken. I also had to be CTG monitored at that point, so you had the cables and stuff to check baby's heart rate and make sure that everything was okay. And I think that went for a couple of hours, so maybe around 10 PM they sent me home because they didn't think I was in established labor yet. Again, like you see on the movies, I just thought like as soon as you go into the hospital and your waters broke, you get to stay. No. But I actually, looking back, I'm so grateful that they did send me home, because that whole entire night I got to labour in the comfort of my own home. As you saw in the vlog, we set up the lounge room, we had candles, I had my hypnobirthing app, I had my music playing, and everything was just really calm and zen. By that point, my contractions were coming every 3 to 4 minutes, so my app was telling me to go back to the hospital. I did call them, and again, they told me that by the sound of my voice, they didn't believe I was in active labour yet, so to stay home again. I also had my TENS machine on at this point, and can I just say, if you're having a baby, 1000% hire a TENS machine. It is honestly the best invention to ever exist. I really don't think I would have got through a natural labour without an epidural if I didn't have my TENS machine. It was honestly a lifesaver, and I used it from the second I felt that first contraction to the second I delivered him. So literally used it for the whole time. So yeah, basically that whole night I just laboured at home. Andy was up with me as well, so he was using pressure on like my back, giving me massages. I was going between the birthing ball and the shower. Unfortunately for us, our shower runs out of hot water within like half an hour, so I was having a shower, getting out, going back in a couple hours later, getting out, and that was very annoying. So the next morning came, and at 8 AM they wanted us to go back into the hospital to do the monitoring again to make sure baby was okay, especially because my waters had already broken for like 12 hours by that point. So we went back into the hospital, baby looked good, I was good. Again, my contractions were still coming every 3 to 4 minutes, but I wasn't in active labour yet, in the sense of my contractions weren't like strong enough for them to admit me into the hospital. So they sent me back home. There was a lot of back and forth. I honestly think I called the hospital like 6 times throughout my whole labour asking to come in, and they were like, no, you cannot come in. Looking back, I think it was because their beds were quite full and they were understaffed, and they did keep saying that to us when we went in. But again, I'm so grateful that I did get to labour for so long at home, because I think it just made me feel so much more positive about the experience. Now that I know how long it took in the end, I think if I was in hospital that whole time, it would have just felt, yeah, a little bit more negative. I probably would have been more likely to ask for an epidural or other forms of pain relief earlier, which then, yeah, could lead to more interventions and stuff down the line. So all in all, I'm so grateful that I did actually get to labour at home for so long. But yeah, so we came home, it was probably 10 AM, and again, that entire day until 10 PM, I just laboured at home. We literally walked laps of my kitchen table, no joke, the whole day. The other thing I really enjoyed while I was in labour in that phase was labouring on the toilet. You don't sit forward like how you would usually go to the toilet, you sit the other way around. So kind of like I had my arms on the toilet seat, like where you flush. That was amazing. I think again, it's just all about gravity and letting everything just like relax and move down. The other thing I didn't know before giving birth is that they kind of test you on the phone when you call up to go into the hospital. So as I said before, I called up probably like 6 times, and each time they sort of tested you by asking you questions, and if you could answer them, then you weren't in active labour. They really want to hear you like basically struggling for air. And they deliberately wait for you to have 2 contractions as well throughout the phone call. So yeah, I didn't realize that at the time, but they kept just telling me like, you're not ready yet, stay home. And at the time I just cried so much, because to me it felt like the worst pain ever. I could not breathe. I was struggling so much. It literally felt like someone had knives in my stomach and was just like stabbing me out like from the inside. That's the only way I can describe contractions, but they were super painful at this point. Obviously manageable, because all I had again was the TENS machine, but they were getting really strong and they were lasting a minute as well. So by this point I was just so exhausted. I was literally begging to go into the hospital. So that afternoon, they finally let me come in. I think it was maybe around 8 PM, and they also checked my dilation, because I had already been in labour for so long, like over 30 hours, and I was 2 centimeters dilated. It is safe to say I literally bawled my eyes out. Like, I was so disheartened by this point. Like, how could I have gone so long in labour and in that much pain and only be 2 centimeters dilated. Like, it was so defeating. The midwives were really lovely and allowed me to actually stay in the hospital from that point on. So basically an older lady came in who had been a midwife for a really long time, and she didn't really even ask me what I wanted. She just said, all right, I'm gonna give you the morphine shot, you're gonna have a sleep, and then I'm gonna wake you up and you're gonna have a baby. And I was like, whatever. I didn't want the morphine shot to begin with, like it wasn't on my birth preferences, but at that point my body was so exhausted that it wasn't even dilating, and I needed rest because I hadn't slept in 2 days. So the idea of being able to sleep, I was like, give me anything. So she took me into a separate room. They gave me the morphine shot, which I think went in my leg, I believe. All of this was honestly a blur. Morphine can make you super sick and nauseous as well, so they did put a like anti-nausea injection into it as well, and I felt fine. So I don't know if I just got lucky or what it was, but yeah, it didn't make me feel sick at all. I had a shower, I got cleaned up, and then they also put the IV drip in. I believe that's because my waters had broken, so they needed to get fluids into baby, and they did this every 3 hours. So you weren't always hooked up to it, but when you were hooked up to it, you couldn't move. So yeah, that was fun. So she gave me the morphine at around 12 in the morning, and she put me in a separate room with another lady, and I basically got to sleep for a couple of hours. So she came in at 4 a.m. and she literally just said, let's go have this baby, which made me so happy and so excited at that point. Like, obviously shit scared because I didn't know what was about to happen, but yeah, it was just wild. Like, the fact that I could just take a nap, wake up, and then have my baby. Also, that nap really made everything so much better as well. I don't think I would have got through the rest of it if I hadn't rested a little bit. So thankful that she knew what she was doing and knew what to give me to help me relax, basically. So by that point, Andy had been sent home as well. So I had called him, he had come back to the hospital, and they had moved me over to the delivery suite. Can I just say, when I was in the delivery suite, the lady next to me was giving birth and she was screaming. So imagine being told you're about to give birth and then all you can hear is just like someone like literally screaming for their life. Was the most terrifying thing ever. So when I got into the delivery room, they checked me again to see how dilated I was, and this time I was 4 centimeters. So again, I still hadn't progressed much, but at least I was 4 centimeters by this point. And she could see that I still had waters surrounding baby's head, so they wanted to pop the rest of it, and obviously that was meant to help me further dilate. So they got like a little hook or something like that, put that in, and it popped the rest of the waters. That didn't hurt at all, which was good, but it did make the contractions a lot stronger, and that's where things really ramped up, hence why I didn't film anything else in the hospital. So from that point on, my contractions were so much stronger. They were still every 3 to 4 minutes, but they were just like 10 times more painful. So by that point, I started using the gas and air. I loved this because something we learned in hypnobirthing was about breathing, and having the gas really helped me do that. So I was like really using my breath, and that helps baby move down in your pelvis as well. So I loved the gas and air. It also made me feel a little bit high. Which made the experience really funny too, because I just remember like laughing in between contractions and cracking jokes and that sort of thing. So I really liked the gas and air. At this point, everything moved so quickly as well. So as I said, I was 4 centimeters at around 4 a.m. and then a couple hours later, I was telling them I really needed to push. Like, every single contraction, my body was bearing down uncontrollably. I was shaking, my legs were cramping, and I was finding it so hard not to push. Like, there was so much pressure down there. I really felt like the baby was going to come out. So I was really struggling by this point, and I did actually ask for an epidural, but my husband knew I didn't want one, and the midwife could tell by the way that I was handling the labor so far that I didn't need it. Like, she fully believed that I could do it without an epidural. So they basically told me, no, like, you've got this, you can do it, which was, again, looking back, I'm so grateful that both of them decided together that, you know, I was capable of doing it without the epidural, and I'm so glad that I didn't have it in the end and got to experience just like how everything felt at the time. They checked me again because I was literally begging, I was crying, I was like, I cannot not push, like my body is just doing it. So they checked me, I was 9 centimeters by that point. Again, you still can't push until you get to 10. So I think by this point I was like standing up in a ballerina pose, like crossing my legs and just squeezing everything tightly so that nothing could come out. It literally just felt like he was going to come out any second. And within maybe like an hour I was at 10 centimeters and ready to push. So I got admitted at 4 a.m. and by this point it was 9 a.m. So it only took 5 hours to go from 4 centimeters to 10 centimeters. So it was quite quick in that sense. But when we got to the pushing phase, because I was hooked up to the monitors the whole time and the IV drip, I had to labor on the bed, which was super, super hard just because you're fighting against gravity. I did try lying on my side with the peanut ball because I had heard that that really helped, but I kept getting leg cramps. So then I decided to try on all fours. So I was on my knees, leaning up against the bed, and I was trying to push that way. It was so difficult. Like, as women, you've never pushed in that position before. Like, obviously you feel a lot of pressure in your bum and they tell you to push as though you were pushing like you were pooping, but that is exactly what I did and it didn't get me anywhere. I did that for a good 2 hours, and by that point they had rushed the doctors in, and basically they just kept telling me to turn around so that they could check me. They wanted to see where baby was and if he was doing okay. But in my mind, I thought that if I turned around and they checked me and I wasn't progressing, that they would intervene. So on my birth preferences, I really didn't want any interventions. I didn't want an episiotomy. I didn't want forceps, a vacuum, and that sort of thing. So I just had to have a quick intermission because baby woke up and needed a feed. If you hear grunting, it's because babies make so much noise, but he should fall asleep now after this feed. Anyway, I cannot remember where I'm up to. I think I was up to the pushing phase. So yeah, as I was saying, I was on all fours and I had been pushing for 2 hours, and at this point I was just really scared of having any sort of intervention because I felt like I had already tried so hard. Like, I had already labored for 35 hours. I'd already been pushing for 2 hours. Like, there was no way that at this point I was letting an intervention get in the way. Obviously if baby was stuck or like he really had to have something to help him come out, then fine, but I don't know, I guess I was really stubborn in this moment and I was like, no, I'm not turning over, you're not checking me, like just give me half an hour, I'm gonna get this baby out. So yeah, I turned on my back at this point and they put the stirrups up. I didn't want to put my legs in stirrups. There's something about it that just made me feel very like medical to do that. But what they did recommend was just pushing against the stirrups, almost like you were doing a leg press at the gym, so using it as resistance. And then another midwife came in and she basically held a towel so that I could pull on it and she would pull on the other end as well. So again, just using some sort of resistance to really help me push in the proper position. I felt like I was pushing more towards my butt as opposed to the exit it's meant to come out. So he just kept bobbing in and out, which was kind of like, obviously it's painful, but it was kind of really cool to feel, like to have all that sensation. And I had heard that is super normal, like the baby bobs in and out to help your cervix dilate and to minimize tearing and that sort of thing. So he was kind of coming in and out and they were like, oh, I see his head, like he's about to come. By that point I could also feel his head, so he was kind of like only a little bit out and I could put my hand down there and feel like the top of his head, which was just wild, kind of gross, but also super cool. And again, I just used that as motivation. So every time a contraction came, I pushed as hard as I could, which looking back probably wasn't the best because I did tear, but yeah, I was pushing so hard because I just wanted him to come out. And then I think like the next contraction, or maybe like 2 contractions after that, I pushed and the rest of his body came out, which again was the weirdest feeling ever. Like you could literally feel their legs and their arms like come out. So crazy. I will say as well, like the pushing phase was not as painful as I had expected. The contractions are obviously a lot more painful because it's getting your body ready for it. But once you're already dilated and at that point ready to push, your body literally just does what it was designed to do and bears down. So although I did have a little bit of that like ring of fire sensation and my body wanted to retreat him back in because I didn't want to feel that pain, in saying that, it really wasn't as bad as I was expecting, and I was breathing pretty normally throughout the whole thing. I thought I was going to be screaming and mooing and all that sort of thing, but in the pushing phase I was actually pretty quiet and just literally breathing. But yeah, he was born at 11:25 in the morning. He got put on my chest, which was the best feeling ever. I had quite a short cord, so he couldn't come up like the whole way. He was kind of stuck on my belly. But we wanted to do delayed cord clamping, so we waited a couple of minutes for the cord to turn white. Andy cut it, and yeah, it was just so magical. I thought I would cry in the moment, but honestly the first words to come out of my mouth was holy fuck, because it was just so intense. Like, to labor for 36 hours and to be pushing for 2.5, like my body was demolished by this point. It was so exhausted, but at the same time you have so much oxytocin flowing through your body that you're just so in love and so happy. So the second I looked at him, it was literally the most surreal moment ever. So I had to lie there for about an hour while I had to wait for the doctor to come stitch me up. That was super weird because I actually really needed to go to the toilet, but they wouldn't let me move. So I just had to wee on the bed, essentially, which TMI, but like the whole birth experience, there's a lot of TMI. I'm actually going to be filming a postpartum and birth Q&A after this video, so if you want to hear some more details, definitely watch that. But yeah, I lost all control of my bladder, which was fun. And they also thought I had a 3rd-degree tear, so they had to get a couple of different doctors to come in and examine me and make sure it wasn't 3rd degree, which was wasn't painful, but it was just really like, I don't want things up there after just pushing a baby out, you know? So anyway, they came in, they did the stitches. They do give you local anesthetic, so it doesn't necessarily hurt, but you can feel the tugging, which is a really creepy sensation. So again, I just used the gas and air to get through that because I just couldn't cope with that. I honestly think getting the stitches was worse than the rest of it, like the pushing phase at least. But after I got that, they got me to have a shower, and the midwife was helping me have a shower in there because I couldn't like stand upright. And then they moved us over to our recovery room and we stayed for a night. We learnt how to breastfeed. He got all these tests and he passed with flying colours, which was amazing. And I just feel so grateful that my birth was positive, that nothing went wrong, and all in all that he came out safe and healthy, and that I was also safe and healthy. And the other thing I wanted to quickly mention was my midwives and the hospital in general. I cannot thank them enough. I honestly cried for 2 weeks straight after coming home, just looking back on the amazing midwives that I had, how beautiful they were in the room, how calming they were. And I honestly had my eyes closed the entire time. I did not see their faces until I had pushed him out and opened my eyes. Like, it's so wild. You go into your own world. You don't care what they're saying to you or anything like that. But looking back, you know that they were just there. They were holding your hand. They were motivating you. They were saying all the right things. And I just loved my midwife so freaking much. And honestly, I couldn't have done it without my husband as well. He was... This is the reality. Your birthing partner and your midwives really make or break your experience. So I just want to say thank you. They'll obviously never see this, but they were actual angels. The fact that someone has a job where they help bring life into this world is just the coolest thing ever. And I'm so grateful. So thank you to Jess, thank you to Kate, Alicia, Sally, like all of the ladies that helped me bring my beautiful baby into this world, because they are amazing. Oh, yes, you're so cute, aren't you? You are so cute. He's 4.5 weeks old today, and I just cannot believe how quickly time is flying. Like, how are you already a month old? Wild. If you guys enjoyed this video, definitely give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to hit subscribe, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.